Hey all, John the Morgile here. Before we get into the video, if you've already seen the most recent upload before this video here you're watching now, and if you don't want to see the montage again, then you can skip to about 14:45, and I'll put a jump to link in the description as well. But again, without further ado, here's the complete video with the Elon Don LaPettit montage, followed by the new content at about 14 minutes and 45 seconds. So enjoy.
Yeah, a bit of sci-fi hitting home for a Michigan couple when a satellite crash landed in their backyard, and their reaction? Priceless.
Never know what's going to happen. This baby fell out of the sky, landed in our yard.
Nancy and Dan Welke, cool as cucumbers, discovering a satellite that had crash landed on their property, still blinking and still attached to a parachute. Turns out the satellite belonged to Samsung, which launched it just days ago as part of a PR stunt to do the world's first selfie in space.
Samsung reps did visit the farm Sunday to make sure everyone and everything was okay. In a statement from the company, they said, quote, Samsung Europe's space selfie balloon came back down to Earth during this planned descent of the balloon to land in the U.S., discovering a satellite of the balloon. Couple when a satellite selfie balloon. Discovering a satellite of the balloon. Couple when a satellite selfie balloon. Discovering a satellite of the balloon.
That's Earth. Molten. Earth is a giant ball of lava with a thin crust on the top, which we think of as like the surface. This thin crust. And it's mostly just a big ball of lava. That's Earth.
I know that this guy, former astronaut Don Pettit, says that we don't currently have the technology to go to the moon anymore, let alone to Mars, because for some unknown reason we destroyed that technology.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. But going to Mars should be one of the next series of steps that humans do. The first step should be going back to the moon for a number of technical reasons and exploration reasons, and then after that, Mars, maybe high orbit in Venus atmosphere, maybe going to Europa. There's all kinds of targets to go to, places of interest in our solar system. The only limit to human future is in our own imaginations. Now this is a cover.
Okay.
So we call it a shutter, and it protects the windows from micrometeorites.
Okay.
The shutters are closed, the windows are protected, and also thermally insulates the windows from the radiation environment of space. So it's called real good engineering.
Oh, okay, wait. On the inside, you're throwing a lever or something.
Yeah, you're turning a knob.
And it's
open. Yeah.
On the outside.
On the outside.
How do you do that and maintain a pressure seal between them?
O-ring type seals.
No, you don't.
It's called real good engineering with a rotating shaft. All our hatch seals are O-ring type seals.
Yeah, but how? My brain's
up here. It's called real good engineering. let's go inside. We can see it.
Okay.
7, because we have 7 windows.
What happens if you get a leak on that?
Then you have a leak. It's called real good engineering.
You just have a leak,
And what you would do
you
is
lose air.
Yeah, you would probably seal the whole cupola off, and then there's probably a plan. Probably a plan. I don't know off the top of my head, but there's probably a plan. If God intended man to be a spacefaring species, he would have given us a moon. This quote is by Kraft Ericke in 1984, and I like the way he stirs the words around from an earlier quote, something about flying. And I like to use it to set the mood for why the moon. Oh, the moon, it's close. It's only 250,000 miles away, but it's close in space vernacular. It's 3 days away, using proven propulsion for human transport. Returning to the moon at 1/6 gravity will allow us to study the physical sciences and the life sciences in a fractional gravity environment. The moon is a destination worthy in its own right.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore.
We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again. It's called real good engineering.
In just a few months, NASA's space shuttle program will take its last flight. But the ABC Action News I-Team uncovered a problem at NASA happening on the ground. Investigator Michael George explains tonight.
8, 7, 6.
They can put a man on the moon.
1. Booster ignition.
But they can't keep track of the equipment they use to do it. That's according to NASA reports obtained by the I-Team. Kennedy Space Center employees report just last year, nearly $500,000 of high-tech items simply vanished.
Something's broke in the system.
Suzanne Padone works for Inventory Management Solutions. Companies hire her to keep track of their inventory and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. We showed her what we found at NASA.
It appears that there isn't really a process working year after year, and it's probably going to continually get worse.
None of the lost equipment is reported to contain classified information, but it is expensive. Like this one, a digital video recorder valued at $100,000. Here's another one, 11 radios lost. Price, $35,000. And a high-tech wave reflectometer went missing in 2008. That's another $18,000. NASA officials say they're aware of the problem.
We need to do a better job of keeping track of it, obviously, and we know that. We want to do a better job of it.
Most of the missing items are computers, TVs, and radio equipment. NASA argues they're losing mostly old and unused items. They also say most of it isn't really lost. It's likely still at Kennedy, somewhere.
Could be something that was supposed to be listed in this place, stored on a shelf to be excised. It's not where it's supposed to be. It gets listed as missing.
Former NASA employee Keith Cowing says NASA's losing more of its technology because the space shuttle program is ending and the agency's facing cutbacks. But he believes NASA shouldn't worry too much about lost equipment.
Don't spend your time tracking computers and not launching spaceships. I mean, you need to be launching spaceships.
As a kid growing up, I saw John Glenn fly into space, and I wanted to become an astronaut, and here I am. Take 3. Now I can die happy. I've flown in space, now I've run one of those. I'm Don Pettit. What do you call that? I'm a NASA astronaut. I've flown 3 times to the International Space Station and spent over a year living there. An example of something designed on Earth that doesn't work in a weightless environment is when you have a beverage with an aroma, like coffee. Much of the pleasure comes from smell, and you can't do that when you suck coffee through a straw from a bag. That's why I made this cup, is so you can drink your beverages from an open container, you can smell them. Let's do a toast. But when you are in space, You can't run down to the store to buy parts. You have to be able to improvise with what you have on your mission. And so I looked around and I found a piece of plastic, cut it up with scissors and used tape. You put your coffee or tea in here, the tea and coffee crawl up the side here that has this angle, and it parks itself right next to the rim, and then you could just put your lips on there and sip it. Made this porcelain version of the Zero-G coffee cup. It's an incredible sense of accomplishment when you have made something. It could be simple, it could be complex, but the fact that you made something and it fulfills a unique function, there's no better feeling than that. And our atmosphere, on edge, it's this thin blue line. And that's all that separates us from the vacuum of space. Suck, suck, suck. Selfie, selfie. The moon, it's useful. Besides just places to live, it's useful for its resources. And we call this in situ resource utilization. It's something engineers think up.
Tell you right now, if you're listening, NSACA, I'm available, okay? If you show me all the real wreckage, I swear to God, I will make fun of that crap to the end of time. I'll make up stories. I'll lie to my mother. I don't care. You show me a UFO, I'll lie to my mother. I swear to God, I will make fun of that crap to the end of time. I'll make up stories. I'll lie to my mother. I don't care. You show me a UFO, I'll lie to my mother.
The work that goes into designing, building, testing, and launching a vehicle of this sort is no small feat. And we are super excited to be a part of the Roadster's billion-year journey through the solar system.
9, 8. Set booster ignition. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
What was going through your mind? How amazed were you to see your Roadster up there with Starman just cruising along with the Blue Planet? And how long will we be getting live views, do you think, from the car?
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. We're not way better CGI. And the colors all kind of weird. It's kind of weird. There's no straight conclusion. Everything's too crisp. But we didn't really test any of those materials as it's sparse.
It's called real good engineering.
You can tell it's real because it looks like
But basically, what it is you don't need to carry everything for a sustained presence on another planet with you from Mother Earth. It's called real good engineering. Particularly things that you need by the thousands, if not tens of thousands of tons. Not pounds, tons.
Incredible views of our Super Heavy booster. And as you can see, the Super Heavy booster has just experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly.
Orale, vatos, what's happening? ¿Cómo estás? John the Morgile here, checking in for a new static planar Earth video for you. I hope you do enjoy it. When asked, hey John, why do you believe in the flat or stationary Earth? Or why don't you believe in the spinning ball Earth? The answer is simple. The world doesn't have curvature and is demonstrably at rest. Quite the contrary to any sort of spinning ball indeed. In other words, there is no physical evidence for geological curvature, nor is there any physical evidence for geological motion. This supersonic rotation and hypersonic orbital velocities demanded by the heliocentric theory would necessarily present measurable physical evidence in the world. This act of allegedly rotating and traveling along multiple curvilinear trajectories is inherently angular acceleration, and yet no physical evidence of this has ever been detected in the history of the world. But what about the curvature? Regardless of how well one might believe the heliocentric standard model explains reality, besides physics, the biggest issue with the ball Earth theory is definitely geometry. Take a look at this video shot by my friend Neil using his Nikon P1000 camera. The still images here were extracted from that video as well, and merely a negative filter applied to those to help sharpen the image. In a nutshell, what we're looking at here is Pikes Peak, located in Colorado, from the vantage point of an airplane taking off from Tucson, Arizona, a distance of over 500 miles. According to the ball Earth theory and related simple geometry, such an unobstructed line of sight to the Rocky Mountains from Arizona is categorically, geometrically impossible. If we consider how a sphere should visibly appear according to observable reality, then distant objects should vertically descend, lower and lower down as distance is gained from an observer. Ask yourself, and be honest with yourself, whether you're seeing Pikes Peak as based miles below where the objects closer to the plane are located, or are we seeing the distant horizon as apparently raising towards the line of sight, so upwards, in accordance with the subjective operation of perspective? In other words, objects below the line of sight, when removed from the observer, will appear to raise higher up towards the horizon or vanishing point, and objects that are above your line of sight, as distance is gained from the observer, will appear to drop lower towards the vanishing point or horizon. That is the subjective law or operation of perspective. And as such, Pikes Peak is based certainly not 10 miles lower down along a curve than the objects that are closer, right? The higher up you gain in altitude, the further you can see. That has to do with your field of view, and it works perfectly on a plane. At some point, the geometry of a sphere demands that objects should drop lower and lower at an increased rate as distance is gained, and ultimately, objects should disappear behind the curve of the Earth. Your line of sight should be obstructed by the geometric horizon that is demanded by the edge of the Earth itself. It's simple geometry, assuming, of course, the Earth is a sphere. The fact that we do not see such vertical descent due to this alleged hypothetical curvature, but in fact we see the opposite of that, where the operation of perspective applies to distant mountains, Pikes Peak, over 500 miles away, where objects below the line of sight apparently rise with distance, while objects higher will drop lower with distance, everything meeting at this vanishing point or horizon. How is it possible to see the highly recognizable Pikes Peak from over 500 miles away in a plane taking off from Tucson, Arizona? Well, the answer is pretty simple. The world is an extended plane, not a sphere, as we were all led to believe. Even if we assume only 300 or 400 miles of this allegedly spherical Earth beyond the hypothetical geometric horizon, which represents the point in space where your line of sight would technically, theoretically become tangent to the hypothetical curve of the Earth, assuming the Earth is a ball in the first place, Pikes Peak should be based at least 10 or maybe even 20 miles below the line of sight. So, according to the geometry of the ball Earth, there's no way that you should be seeing Pikes Peak from 500 miles away. You know, if this is true, and there it is, there's Pikes Peak from Tucson, how could everyone be so damn wrong? The entire institution of science, the federal education curriculum, astronomers, theoretical astrophysics, even NASA, all wrong, or even some of them perhaps lying. And we won't name any names, NASA. Well, thankfully, it isn't my responsibility to answer that. Really, all I'm responsible to do is to show you guys how obviously viewing Pikes Peak from Arizona should be impossible on the ball Earth. And the fact that we can indeed clearly see this mountain from over 500 miles away is some of the best evidence for the flat Earth plane, which cannot be argued against with anything less than purposeful obtuseness in the form of the so-called quote-unquote standard refraction, which is this convenient mathemagic which assumes the Earth is a sphere in order to mathematically, quote-unquote, prove the Earth is a sphere. You know, mathemagic. But really though, how could everyone be so damn wrong? Our teachers, parents, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, and Michio Kaku too? Sadly, the answer to that question is rather simple as well. Mind control, in short. Yeah, mind control. The longer version, well, they, and I actually have an entire video about who they are, I'll put a card here, they ingrained the cultural belief in spinning ball Earth into our collective paradigm during our formative years as children, via primarily the educational system, NASA and all them, and mainstream media franchises centered around science fiction, just to name a few. The space age was ushered in as a predictive program injected into modern Western society in order to cast doubt on certain ancient wisdom that has historically been preserved through past ages, but has been hoarded and exploited by this spiritual wickedness in high places. The masses convinced that no such wisdom or powers actually exist. Let's face it, either way, we've been scammed. Not by some super believable, complex, well-camouflaged scam. No indeed. Instead, we've been bamboozled by a terribly simple, wholly illogical and unbelievable, obvious and easily debunked lie, which really only worked because it was forced upon everyone during our childhood. Before we were capable of logically defending ourselves against the absurd tenets involved with the spinning ball Earth. Not to mention mind control program delivery system, the TV, injecting space-age propaganda or like space porn directly into our brain meats, while our parents and grandparents were just innocent children. They were doing this as well. So, what is the motivation behind this grandiose and completely bonkers lie? The reasons why a certain shadowy group of oligarchs would want to mind control the world into godless, faithless scientism? Well, the short answer is control. Faith is our strongest power, believe it or not. If you get a group of people together who are strong in faith and love and trust, nothing can stop them. So they really don't want people to be strong in truth and faith. But godless, materialistic, deceived people who are all convinced that we're just some chemical reaction evolved from broccoli's ancestor, those types can be convinced that life is cheap and there's nothing beyond the physical, nothing beyond the flesh. They've convinced us all in the absurd concept of infinite space, wherein the world and human civilization are seen as insignificant, incidental results of chemical happenstance. By divorcing us from the concept of God or supernatural intelligent creator of all things, and convincing us that we're all some evolutionary fluke in the infinite universe, they have deceived us into a lower vibrational state, disconnected from our source, preventing us from reaching our full potential as human beings. There's also a chemical element of this assault as well. Effective, natural, affordable cures are buried by the disease industry, which claims to be the medical industry, while they literally poison our water supply with the developmental neurotoxin sodium fluoride and claim that it's good for our teeth. It's shown to make people more docile, less confrontational, and causes learning disabilities in children, not to mention fluorosis of the bones in the teeth, and it also calcifies or fluoridates the pineal gland, complete with optic nerves, a retina, and is associated with dreams and visualization. It's like an eyeball right in the middle of your brain. Again, the only purpose of this video is to show you how the world utterly lacks the necessary curvature to result in a spherical planet. No curvature, no sphere, no infinite space. No infinite space, no evolution, no Big Bang, and the creation accounts found in the ancient teachings and biblical scriptures seem to hold far more weight than they may have appeared to us previously. Notice in these high-resolution images from the video shot from a plane in Arizona, the rolling waves of mountains layering off into the distance. Does that look like 500 miles worth of inverse square curvature, where the distant mountains are based lower and lower with distance? Remember, according to the standard model, they claim the giant ball Earth is more perfectly spherical, pound for pound, than a bowling ball, factoring in the surface of all the waters, of course, and the overall trend of the Earth is a lumpy plane. So like the small bumps and scratches on a bowling ball, forget about the finger holes for a minute. You pervs always on about the finger holes. The bumps and scratches on a bowling ball, if you were to expand that ball to the size of the alleged ball Earth, those bumps and scratches would be more pronounced than the tallest peaks and deepest canyons on the face of the Earth, pound for pound. And of course, the surface of the seas are all level, and so that would account for, in the case of flat Earth, a perfectly flat plane, and in the case of ball Earth, a perfectly convex curve. So with all that being agreed for argument's sake, then applied to the actual flat Earth, regardless of how the mountains and the valleys of the dry lands might undulate and vary, on the macroscopic level, like the overall profile of the Earth plane is level. And of course, since the majority of the world's surface is water, which is always level no matter which model you're considering, the overall average of the dry lands and ocean surface is definitely flat and level, clearly over this distance exceeding 500 miles, as we can see visually. So thanks again, Neil. That video and associated pictures.
Well, I think it looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly.
For everyone that has tried to say that Elon Musk is the biggest genius ever to walk the face of the Earth, and that there would be people on Mars by 2024, and tours going to the moon any day now, frankly, you guys, it's never going to happen because space doesn't exist. The celestial lights are merely mysterious, indeed, mysterious lights in the sky. And nobody's ever going to the moon or to Mars, none of the wandering stars. That's all nonsense. You can't travel to the celestial realm. It isn't possible, folks. And so when we see SpaceX crashing yet again another multi-billion-dollar rocket and getting congratulated by NASA, we know why. I had mentioned in a recent stream about the Go Fast rocket launch. Just wanted to play some of that for you guys so that you would see what I was talking about. They claim that this rocket went up to 73 miles, I think, is what they claimed. However, it doesn't appear to have gone much higher than, people send up weather balloons every day, like maybe 20 miles. And really, for it to go allegedly over 70 miles in like less than a minute, it is pretty damn unbelievable in my opinion. So what so many flat earthers are claiming is this thing hitting the dome and going into the waters and space and all this nonsense. First of all, assuming that this is a real video, the first noise that you hear is the D-spin mechanism kicking in. And the second noise that you hear is the primary stage rocket decoupling. That's it. It's not hitting anything. Now, it is interesting that you see the moon here in this clip right above the flat horizon, even at that altitude. So if they are at 70 miles, still flat from that high, of course. But it was this shot right here that got me thinking years ago, because the claim was made then that the moon shouldn't have been visible from where this rocket launch took place. And so that got me thinking about, okay, well, how could one tell, first of all, where is the moon supposed to be at a given time, and then match that up with where we can visually see the moon? And, at first, without thinking about it, it seems like it would be rather daunting to figure out, where the moon should be according to the ball Earth theory. But luckily, according to the ball Earth theory, the moon's phases would be the perfect indicator of where the moon should be in space relative to the Earth and the sun. So the full moon should be like 12 o'clock position opposite the sun. The no moon should be like the 6 o'clock position aligned to the sun, more or less. And the half moons should be at 3 and 6, according to an observer on Earth, all of these. Okay. Now, the ball Earth model proclaims that the moon's orbital plane is offset to the ecliptic plane, which is the Earth's orbital plane, by a mere 5 degrees, which ain't much. So, for all intents and purposes, you can practically say that the moon orbits along the ecliptic plane. For purposes of diagramming it out, you can very adequately use
the same 2D diagram for each view. So either viewing from the X or viewing from the Y coordinate. As you can see in these two diagrams, you don't need to change much. We oftentimes see the full moon during broad daylight hours when it should be on the opposite end of the Earth. And there's really quite no argument against this other than they try to say that, well, you're viewing the moon over the top of the Earth, which doesn't match up with what we see. What we see is the moon traversing the ecliptic plane like it always does, meaning they're full of shit. That argument might hold some water if you're standing in the North Arctic Circle during the northern summer solstice time, also when the moon is north of the ecliptic plane.
Okay, so this little video here was shot by myself, November 30th, 2023, at about 10 till 8 in the AM. The 95% full moon, according to timeanddate.com, is visible a good, 15, 20 degrees over the horizon in the west, while the sun is seen rising through the trees, maybe 5 degrees over the horizon in the east. And we'll expect to see the moon set by about 9:30 or so. So if you compare this observation to the heliocentric model, it is an impossible observation, because the 95% full moon should be on the opposite side of the ball Earth, some 250,000 miles below your feet in space, on the dark side of the allegedly spherical planet. The fact of the matter is the moon's phase, while sometimes aligns to the theory of a spinning ball Earth, in other times like today, the 95% full moon is seen in broad daylight hours and will be as such for the next hour or so after this was shot. And for the record, I checked timeanddate.com and it was 95% full moon that day. So according to the geometry demanded by the ball Earth theory, it would place the moon, physically position the moon, about as far over onto the night side of the Earth as the moon can possibly get at 95% full. And yet, here we can see clearly the moon 15 or 20 degrees over the horizon at almost 8 a.m. It was like 10 to 8 a.m. when I shot the video. I'll put up a graphic with the sunrise and moon set data.
So once you establish where the moon should be, it is rather easy to determine whether or not we're seeing it where it should be. And oftentimes we'll see full moon during broad daylight or crescent moon during the middle of the night, both of which are good examples of the moon being in the wrong place according to the heliocentric model. It should be very much cut and dried, very predictable. The moon should be, when it is full, should be on the night side of the Earth, and when it's in its crescent stages, it should be on the day side. And in reality, we see the contrary to that all the time. Maybe not every month. Certain months it appears the moon does jive with the theory, and other months it does not, which proves the theory is wrong. The ball Earth theory falls apart based on this one point alone. And really the only chance that people have to get around this is to simply fail to understand the argument and ignore it, which is quite the opposite of a scientific mind. Now that we've set up this nice diagram of where the moon should be according to its phases, and we've also mapped out that it is more or less aligned to the ecliptic plane, the reason that they say solar eclipses occur is when the moon is in the no moon phase
and it is also aligned to the ecliptic plane so that it threads the needle of the sun, space, and time when it is aligned to the ecliptic plane on the no moon phase precisely, which means there is only one point in space where the moon could be situated in order to cast shadow onto the Earth. Which, by the way, the shadow of the moon is sometimes just a few miles in diameter, which I'm not exactly sure how you'd get a shadow of an object that's 2,000 miles in diameter, casting 250,000 miles through space and hitting the Earth as a couple of miles in diameter. That's really quite the trick, but we'll just ignore that for now. What the point that I'm trying to make is that we have a very precise sort of stylus-like pointer where the moon's shadow, aligned to the sun on the ecliptic plane, should be hitting the Earth at a very specific place, which would be basically the point at solar noon, and that point would be aligned to the ecliptic plane necessarily. And in fact, sometimes we see the eclipse signatures from total solar eclipses traversing the poles, certainly not at solar noon, all over the place, conclusively proving that the heliocentric model doesn't work. We're definitely dealing with a local cosmology. The celestial lights are local. And really, once you've demonstrated that the Earth doesn't have curvature and it is not in motion, it really isn't necessary to come up with any sort of explanation for astronomy, because the standard explanation for astronomy has fallen apart, and it is time to start looking for new solutions, looking for new models, not having to endlessly argue with people who seem to be purposefully obtuse, oftentimes, although it is a difficult bit of programming to get around. So I pray that you and your loved ones are able to overcome this great deception, this grand delusion that has fooled the very elect for a time, but no more. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. I do appreciate you sitting with me. If you'd like to contribute to the channel effort, links are below for Patreon and PayPal and all that. Thanks so much to our channel supporters. We appreciate and love you very much, and we will see you very soon in the next one. As always, spread the word, spread the world, and peace out, everybody.